Rea Frey's passion in life is telling stories, connecting with readers, and helping other aspiring authors tell their stories too. She's the celebrated author of Not Her Daughter, Because You're Mine, and Until I Find You. She also is the founder and CEO of Writeway, where aspiring authors become published authors. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Rea.
Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, I know you've got some big news coming out, which is a new book coming out on February 4th, The Secrets of Our House. And I definitely want to talk about that, book. But before we do, I always like to say that this is sort of, revealing this podcast is, revealing the stories behind the stories. So please tell me, where does your story as an author begin?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I never really thought about truly being an author because I actually grew up with the stereotype of you can never make money as a writer. It's a total, total hobby, total side hustle, or just this dream that couldn't really become a career. But I grew up in a household with a father who was such an avid writer. My dad is a wonderful poet. He always was writing and really inspired me to write. So I grew up as really journaling, writing poems, writing stories, but I didn't think I was ever going to pursue it. And then I ended up going to Columbia in Chicago for fiction writing. I was like, why not? Let's give this a try. And started out actually as a journalism major and changed it. And I got a really shitty novel published when I was 22 years old. I really rushed that process. It was nothing more than a vanity press. And I just, did everything wrong. I never saw a dime from that book. And I was so burned by that experience that I was like, I'm not touching fiction anymore. I don't want to do this again. But I also took it upon myself to start learning about the industry. Where did I go wrong? Why was I in such a rush to get published? What did I need to know about the business? And so I quickly pivoted to nonfiction and got 4 books in the health and wellness space traditionally published, and was like, great, I know how to get a book deal now. But I did not have that author platform, which back then wasn't really as important as it is today. But I was like, I can write a book, I can publish a book, but now I need to know how to sell a book. So I was on this author journey, but I still wasn't really making good money from it. I was still treating it like a side hustle. And, kind of fast forward a bit, I didn't touch fiction for 10 years. I really wanted to return to it. Late 2016, early 2017, I got an idea for a novel and was like, I'm going to do this time, and I'm going to do it the right way. So I was working 3 jobs at the time. I went home, I quit 2 of them. I gave myself an 8-week deadline to write a book. I wrote a book in a month. Got the agent, the book went to auction, landed a 2-book deal with St. Martin's Press, a movie deal, another 2-book deal. So it was like this really long journey seemed to all of a sudden cement itself into a real, quote unquote, real career. And I thought, man, now this time it's all going to be different. I'm going to sell 1 million copies and everything's going to be great. And while a lot of wonderful things happen, I still continuously learn along my journey. And these past 4 books, the past 4 years, I've learned invaluable lessons, which I share with authors. But yeah, my career really started with that really terrible first novel and being in a rush to just get out there, get a book out there before I even knew how it all worked, which I think is a very common mistake a lot of writers make.
I'm curious. You say it's a terrible novel. What made it a terrible novel?
I think I fell prey to that cliche of every writer, it's fiction, but it was totally not fiction. But it's about a woman who abandons her children to pursue her dreams of becoming a professional boxer, which, I mean, come on. But I used to be a competitive boxer, and I ended up getting brain surgery. So it really chronicles that whole thing. I think I was using it as a therapeutic process to process my own trauma in a book. And it needed some work. 22-year-olds writing novels, it's not your best work.
Yeah, I always like to tell people that I always had dreams of becoming a boxer, but I just never liked the idea of being hit.
Yeah. And I realized, after my brain surgery, my neurosurgeon was like, no, it's awesome. You're a boxer. We'll put 4 titanium plates in there, 16 screws. You'll be back in the ring in no time. And I was. And then it dawned on me. I was like, what am I doing? I am risking my health, my brain, which is my most important asset. It's just not worth it. So I loved the sport so much, but ultimately, it was not worth my health.
Even though you consider that book sort of you didn't use the term failure, but I can assume that you
Oh,
might
it
think it
was a
is.
failure. Yeah, it was a big old flop.
So it's a flop, it's a failure, but it sounds like you learned something from that experience that you took away. So it couldn't have been that much of a failure.
No, I think it was a catalyst, actually. I think if everything had gone really well, I would have been really naive going forward. I probably wouldn't have done the due diligence and the research to understand the ins and outs of the publishing industry, because it's not something we're taught as authors. No one is sitting down saying, this is how to be an author. This is how to be a successful author. This is how to define success. This is how to make money. This is how to expand your brand, which is, what I do now with authors, and advocating for them and really helping them figure it all out.
Yeah. So tell me, just you kind of painted a picture of kind of writing that, not that first novel, but when you said, hey, you have an idea for fiction,
Yeah.
after taking some time away and doing nonfiction, you gave yourself a deadline of 8 weeks and you wrote something in 4 and then found an agent and it went to auction. And that as a timeline to me sounds
Crazy.
ridiculously,
Yeah.
it's like a dream. I never hear of stories like that. Just kind of piece that all together for me.
Yeah. So I'll preface this by saying I am a fast writer. I've always been a fast and furious writer. I'm not someone who can spend 5 years on a book. I would change it too much. I have an editing background, so I'm always kind of changing things as they grow. But with that book, that I saw that book from beginning to end all in one go. And it was the most out of body experience I've ever had. That book, I always say, it wrote itself. It just flew out on the page. It was a very provocative concept. So I knew, it had marketability and sellability. And I just wrote it, edited it. I knew how to pitch to agents. I'd interned at a literary agency. I'd done all my research, and just found someone who fell in love with it. So it was just such a fast and furious process, but it had been years and years and years in the making.
Right. Yeah. No one sees that part of it, right? No one sees the slow burn. Yeah,
Exactly.
I always like to say there are no such things as overnight successes, even if it looks like it. It's
Sure.
no one sees the journey leading up to it. What was so provocative about that story?
So this book is based on a 5-year-old who gets kidnapped from her mother in order to save her. So it's kind of a reverse play on kidnapping. Like, is there a kidnapping for good? Can you take a child? And so I really love, like, I always joke that with fiction, I love writing about things that scare the shit out of parents, or there are worse nightmares. So I write about, a child dying or getting kidnapped, or like a child being without a guardian. My 3rd book was about like a blind widow who believes her 3-month-old son has been swapped for another baby and no one will believe her. So I really love playing with these black and white concepts and making the reader struggle with what they would do and how they would react. So, and a lot of that came from studying my genre. I didn't even know, I knew I like to read thrillers and suspense books, but I'm actually in what's considered the domestic suspense genre. And I was like, what's that? I don't even know what that is. Which means you're just focused on relationships a little bit more than a straight up mystery. So it's been really, really fun to kind of like dip my toe into this genre and see what shakes out.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I have a twin brother. I'm also the father of triplets.
Father, let's
I know. They're closer to 20 than 19 right now. It's pretty amazing. But and they're all still alive, which is great. But
yes, that's great.
I sometimes think that like I may have been separated from my real twin brother at birth, because my twin, who's certainly one of my best friends, we are so incredibly different. Like there is nothing. We don't even look the same. He's like 3 inches taller than me, has olive skin. He got the Italian side of the family. I got the Irish side of the family. Fortunately, I got the sense of humor, and he's a lawyer. So
no sense of humor at all.
could be a story in there.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned sort of that first attempt at fiction. You were 22, you mentioned.
Yeah.
Now, in my words of advice, that and I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit for the audience who probably don't know. I usually do these pre-interview questions that I have everyone fill out answers to, and that's really my way of screening people a little bit. I rarely, if ever, bring them into the conversation. But something else happened to you at 22, because I asked you, what words of advice would you give your younger self? What did you write? Do you remember what you wrote?
Said, yes, do not get married at 22. It's just not a good idea. You shouldn't think about it. You shouldn't do it. Nope. Just say no.
So since this is uncorking a story, I have to know, what's the story there.
Yeah. So ironically, I got this book published before I turned 22, and I also got married before I graduated college. So I met this guy in the boxing ring of all places. So we had established a relationship on beating the shit out of each other, which is just not a great foundation for any relationship. But he was also 12 years older than me. So he was closer to age with my parents than with me. And we dated for a couple of years. I'm someone, I never wanted to get married. I never wanted to have kids. I've now, been married twice and have a 9-year-old. So it's just funny how life works out. But I remember, getting ready to walk down the aisle and having a full-on panic attack. And just my whole body was screaming, no, don't do this. And I remember my dad like, hey, we can run away. You don't have to do this. And I didn't honor that part of myself because everything was paid for. Everyone was already there. So I went through with it. And, we lasted a total of 7 years, talked about divorce for the last 3 of them. We're now great friends and it's all good, but we're not the right fit. And I always say, like, I don't think anybody should even think about marriage until they're in their 30s or not do it at all. You don't have to do it at all. Just live with someone.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was engaged at 22,
Yeah.
married at 23. Maybe I was about to turn 24.
Yeah.
It is, you're not really an adult at that point.
No.
Or your brain, I like to say your brain is still sort of forming itself. I mean, unless you're getting hit in the head all the time by being
Yeah, right. So
boxing.
maybe that I'll just blame it on the boxing. Are you still married?
I am still married. Yes, we are still married,
That's
with
awesome.
three kids later, but it's, it hasn't been without its challenges. That's for certain.
Sure. Of
Hasn't
course.
been without its challenges. We had a great foundation of friendship. I met her when I was 18.
Yeah.
So it was like the first day of college, it's one of those things.
That's
Um,
amazing. That's not rare these days, I feel like.
yeah, it was rare. But it is what it is. But you're right. I mean, at 22, 23, you're still kind of figuring shit out. You haven't really lived life yet.
No, I mean, we constantly evolve and change. Like I'm 40. I'm such a different person than I was at 30, than I was at 20. I mean, it's just a constant evolution. And I think growing with someone can be a challenge if you're not completely on the same page. And he and I were not. I mean, that was apparent from the from the get-go, but it's not an experience I regret. It's really led me to where I am now. So
Right. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
it happened, and I always like to think that even from our mistakes, or missteps,
Sure.
it's an opportunity to learn from it. And I think the difference between success and failure is being open to learning from those sort of
100%.
missteps, so you can, again, we're all still trying to. I'm 48 years old. I'm still trying to figure out
Yep.
who I am as a person. At 48 or
Absolutely.
47, I think I'm 47. I can't even
I know
remember.
it all. I'm just
It
like,
doesn't matter. Really, after 48, it just doesn't matter.
it doesn't. Yep, I agree.
Another thing I have to ask about, because your response to this one was so intriguing to me. If you didn't write for a living, what would you do? Do you remember what you said?
I said a couple things, I think. An assassin. I'd love to be an assassin. So my husband and I always joke like we would be the best assassins. And I don't know what that means exactly or what that says about us, but I've done a lot of work with death row inmates, so convicted murderers. I've worked a lot as a journalist with them, spent time with them, been on death row, and I've always had biggest sense of empathy for these human beings who were once, innocent, and at some point something happened to really change the trajectory of their lives. So I've spent so much time in that space that, again, my husband and I joke that we could be assassins and just sleep well at night. That says, or, I could be a therapist, which, I mean, after what I just said, I wouldn't have any business, I don't think, but I kind of serve as a therapist to all of my friends, to all of my clients. I was a personal trainer for 15 years. That was like a form of therapy in and of itself. So I've always loved to put myself in a position of just helping other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk to a therapist every week, and she's wonderful. But what I realized, it's there's nothing magical about having that degree. It's more about, being a good listener and sort of, not always providing your opinions, but just kind of
Yep.
asking the right questions. And I think, as, somebody who writes, for a living, as well as consults with authors, we're just naturally curious individuals. And I think it's letting that curiosity lead us a little bit is so important. You also said a professional athlete. So is assassin, therapist, or professional athlete, or a therapist who's secretly an assassin and moonlights as a professional athlete? So
Come on, the best of all worlds. Yeah, I was a I was a gymnast for 13 years growing up, and really, really wanted to push that as far as I could. And again, with the competitive boxing, I just think, I don't know, my husband was a semi-professional rugby player. Now he's super entrenched in Jiu Jitsu, and being active is such a huge part of our lives. But we always joke about that too, that we kind of both miss the professional athlete boat. And now our bodies, are really feeling it at 40 from a lifetime of beating the crap out of them. So that's fun.
It's not like you were golfing.
No.
You are. Do you ever argue you with him about, boxing versus jujitsu? I mean, do you ever throw down and
so I did a little bit of jujitsu as well. I've had knee surgery, so I have to be, it's just not worth getting injured at this point. But jujitsu and boxing are so wildly different. And I mean, I much prefer jujitsu. I think it's way more beneficial. And everybody should know how to defend themselves. I think it's very important.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, let's talk about The Secrets of Our House, which is going to be available on February 8th. Tell me a little bit more about this story and how it came to you.
Yeah, so this one is a wild departure from my other three books. So my other three books are, again, like I said, domestic suspense, very kind of hooky. This is much more family saga, family drama. The setting is very important. So in a nutshell, the book is about a family of three, a husband, a wife, and a 17-year-old daughter who go to their dream vacation getaway house called the Black House, which sits on the top of this mountain. And they want to have just one last summer together. The couple's trying to save their marriage. The daughter's about to leave for college. And they're really just looking forward to a nice, mellow summer. When they get there, these long held secrets start to come out for each of them. And then a really big tragedy ensues, which has all of them, fighting for their lives and really figuring out what secrets are going to be revealed and what damage is going to be done from it all. So it's a totally different book for me, but the setting itself, the house is actually based on a really good friend of mine, her house, Emily Carpenter. She's also a kind of gothic thriller writer. And I walked into her house. It's just monstrous compound. And I was like, this is the best place for a murder. I have to write about this house. And while there's no murder in Secrets of Our House, it really was the impetus for this book. So the house is what started this story for me instead of the characters or the storyline.
Wow. I mean, family secrets, there's so much richness there, because who can't relate to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And how well do we ever really know the people that we're living with, down to the deepest, darkest secrets they might be hiding from us.
Deep, dark secrets. I just learned, this is kind of roundabout. My parents are 89 and 88. They've been married for, this year it'll be 64 years.
Wow.
And I learned recently that my mother had a boyfriend before my father.
Yeah.
Not after, because that would have been much more scandalous.
Yes.
But but before, and apparently he was the love of her life, and he lost his
Oh,
life in a boating accident, like off the coast of New Rochelle. He drowned. And then it was almost like my father was sort of number two. And
wow.
I never knew that, and it was never spoken of. But it's like, yeah, I mean, all families have big secrets, small secrets, and I'm curious to unearth more secrets.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, the parent-child dynamic, children don't often see their parents as these, thriving, flawed human beings with a whole past before them, and very like rich layered, like a rich layered background. And I mean, what you just said really illustrates that. Like, we don't think about them being heartbroken and in love, or just all of the things that we all go through that might not come to the surface, even though you share a home for at least 18 years. It's just wild to me how much sometimes parents and children don't know about each other.
Yeah, and it's actually, part of I think the secret sauce to, I'm sure you've seen Back to the Future with Michael J.
Of
Fox, and
course.
of course it's a compelling story, but this notion of seeing your parents at your
Yes.
age, and
Oh,
kind of, because we never
yeah.
think of, I mean, I never thought my parents as real human beings. I thought that they were almost deities in my mind. And now the father of 3 19-year-olds, I mean, they probably think that I'm some, I want to say flawless, but I know they hold me to a higher regard. I was talking to my daughter the other day, and my twin brother, my aforementioned twin, went through a divorce 3 years ago.
Mhm,
He and before that divorce, he had been seeing somebody else.
mhm.
Their family kind of structure kind of fell apart, and
Yep.
my daughter was saying, I'm really disappointed in Uncle Jimmy because he was doing such and such with such and such. And I'm like, I understand how you feel that way, but you need to know the full context of kind of what's happening. I'm not excusing his behavior, but I'm trying to understand it a little bit. But I think kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Infidelity is, I mean, actually wrote a book about infidelity back in 2010. But it's always indicative of something on both sides of the relationship, or something people, aren't getting. And like, for my parents, I grew up with a really different environment though, because my parents got married at 18 years old, had my brother, had me at 22. They're still together. So they were kids, like, raising us. So they were almost more like friends in a sense than I didn't look at them like parents, because everybody else's parents were older. All my friends always came over to our house. Like, it was just, I don't know, it's just been so different. So we're all kind of growing older together, which is really, really interesting. And now with my daughter, there's only one kid. I mean, my brother won't have kids. My husband's brother won't have kids. So our daughter is it. And the bond that my parents have with my daughter it's unlike anything I've witnessed. And they're like, you and your brother are great, but like, she's number one. Like, the grandparent grandchild relationship is the best thing ever. So
Right.
that's been really cool to see.
Yeah. Well, I know you have a lot of wisdom in your years, stemming from that first kind of misstep with your first novel, but also learning a lot during the publishing process. Talk to me a little bit about Writeway, and sort of how you kind of came to being a support for other authors.
Yeah, so it's called Writeway. And I started this as a side hustle back in like 2017, 2018, before my debut novel came out, Not Her Daughter, because I just don't consider that first book a real book. So I say it's my debut novel. But I wanted to hire an outside publicist for $20,000 for that book. And I was like, I need to do some stuff on the side. So I'm not using my advance, and I'm not, I want to do this again, quote unquote, the right way. So I started helping authors create their nonfiction book proposals to pitch to agents and or editors, and land them agents and book deals. I also did some ghostwriting. I, edited fiction, but I just started helping clients on the side. And the first year alone, it turned into a 6-figure business. And I was like, what? without trying, just based on referral. Second year, same thing. So at the top of 2020, before the pandemic hit, I was like, I'm turning this into a real business. So we launched Writeway at the top of 2020. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, what have we done? This is not going to be great. And instead, in the last 2 years, it's been quite the opposite. We've had close to 65 authors, first-time authors, land top literary agents and book deals. Some have gone on to become #1 best-selling authors. Our nonfiction book proposal methodology is really like the special sauce. We help you create book proposals that sell. And a lot of people don't know that to sell a nonfiction book, you create the book proposal. You don't write the book first. Whereas with fiction, you have to write the book, edit the book, then you pitch it. So we also pitch our clients to agents that we know and we trust. So it's a very, very one-on-one process. We really walk them through what they need to know, how to negotiate contracts, how to get paid, because I love teaching all the stuff that no one taught me and no one does teach you. The publishing industry is a very antiquated private industry. So we really focus on a client's like big why, their big goal, why they're doing this. We help them choose their publication path, even if that's self-publishing. Most people want to get traditionally published. And then we help kind of curate a plan to get them there.
And, I may have missed it when you said it, but are you just focusing on nonfiction or fiction as well?
So we do both, but this year we've really, really decided to lean into nonfiction because that's predominantly where our business is. And a lot of these people aren't authors. They're not writers. They're business owners. They're executives. They're lifestyle experts. They're people who want to legitimize their brand or business with another product to sell, and a book is a great way to do that. But we will take on a very few select fiction projects. We offer, used to offer just the whole gamut of developmental editing, copy editing, proofreading, pitching. We'd help self-published authors, get everything ready to go, or pitch fiction authors to agents and editors as well.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing for fiction writers, and this, speaking from experience, is just finding an agent who's going to take a chance on you.
Yes,
to me, I could wallpaper my office. Now I have a green screen behind me, but if I put that down, I could wallpaper my office with just form letters of just they all say the exact same thing, which it always amazed me because agents are always looking for something new and different and unique, and their form letters are all the same. They're the exact opposite of what they're looking for.
But that actually can be very revealing, though, because what we do is I see a lot of fiction authors specifically make this mistake where they'll get their book done. They won't have someone professionally edit it. And then they, will put their query letter together, and then they'll pitch to like 50 agents. We don't do that. We are very careful with the query letter. We only pitch 5 agents at a time. And if we got all rejections from those agents, then we know something is wrong with the pitch itself, and we can fix that. If you get 5 full manuscript requests, then great, the pitch is really solid. But then if no one bites, we look at it like piece by piece. Like, do we need to tweak the query letter? Do we need to really work on your first 3 chapters? But it's so tough because fiction is so subjective. So a lot of times it's really understanding your competitors, looking into editors, finding, agents, like looking for the newer agents who are really, really hungry to build their lists. A lot of fiction authors like, I want this huge agent who reps my, favorite author. And while that's great, a lot of times these newer agents are being overlooked, and they're the ones that will work the hardest for you. So that's what I did. I had an agent who had been an editor for 5 years. She was a newer agent. I had a veteran agent that wanted the book, and then this newer agent who was so wildly passionate about it. So I chose her, and I'm so glad I did because she's been my biggest advocate.
Wow, that's fantastic. A fantastic story. I'm curious about your podcast. It seems like it's called something Provocative. What's the name of the podcast?
No, it's just the same name as our business. It's called Writeway. I think I had talked about that I did a solo episode that had a provocative title called Dear Publishing Industry, Fuck You, because I was just really fed up with my publishing experience and no one was really talking about it. So I decided to air this solo episode. It's very, very raw and very vulnerable. And I had New York Times bestselling authors reach out to me, huge authors, my literary heroes, mid-list authors, smaller authors, all saying, thank you for saying what I feel like I can't say. So it really got this conversation started. Though the podcast itself is really aimed around demystifying the publishing industry and helping authors understand what they need to know in order to pick their publication path. But we're really, really honest on there. So all the stuff you want to know about money, about how it really works behind the scenes, we talk about all of that.
Well, I can't wait to listen to that. And that was the episode I was thinking of. And I, just I talked to so many authors, and it's, everyone's kind of polite about it because you don't want to sort of, get blacklisted or something, but exactly. It is, and I have a whole career as a, a marketing consultant, outside of my writing and this podcast. And it is one of the industries that just has not changed with the times.
It really has not. And there's some publishers out there that are trying, but for the most part, it's just the same old model, and it really has to change. I mean, authors are getting so fed up, but yeah, we don't want to seem like we're ungrateful, but at the same time, it's like publishers are doing less and less for their authors. We as authors have to be marketing wizards, social media gurus. We're spending all of our time on everything but the craft. And to me, it's like, I wanted to be a writer so I can like stay in my pajamas and create. Like, I don't necessarily want to be all of these other things because that's not where my genius lies, and I think it's very frustrating. That's like, well, it's just the way it is. It's just what you got to do. And so we really work with our authors, especially on our book proposals in the marketing section, where our first rule of marketing is like, figure out what you like to do and then ditch the rest. You don't have to do all of these things that everyone else is doing. You can find a way to market and promote your book that feels really, really good for you.
You mean I don't have to do TikTok videos if I don't want to?
Oh God. I mean, my goal and this, everyone's like, you're crazy. My goal is to be a successful author and have no social media. I've already deleted Twitter. I'm deleting Facebook after this next launch. Instagram's the only one that doesn't make me want to vomit. And with our business, we are word of mouth referral only. We do not advertise on social media. We take our clients' privacy very seriously. And for me, I mean, I think the next wave is going to be privacy, people wanting more privacy, instead of just like constantly saturating every single social media platform. It just takes us away from our real lives and our real work.
All right. Well, I have a series of 7 questions that I call the hot seat. I don't want you to think about these too much. I just want you to let your gut answer. First up is, how do you feel when you're staring at a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen?
Excited.
Why excited?
Yeah, I love starting a new project. I think it's just a world of possibility. It's kind of limitless. It's a clean slate. It's not a trepidatious thing for me. I love it.
Yeah, I've heard other people say anxious, but
no, I like it.
All right.
I like getting done with stuff and moving on. I'm always ready to start something new.
Does anything else give you that same level of excitement, or is it a unique excitement?
No, I mean, there's so many different things I love. I mean, movement is such a huge part of my life, breath work, meditation, going to a new place. Like, I love that sense of just kind of newness and discovery. So I try to get that excitement wherever I can. All
right. Number 2, what lesson about writing or publishing did you have to learn the hard way?
All of it. How to be an author, actually, how to be an author. Like I've said in this podcast, I don't think it's something we're taught. And I think we have these big dreams and then we don't really know how it works. So I think really having a bunch of missteps along the way and asking the hard questions. It's been a very, very hard but valuable lesson to learn.
Now, given you being the founder and CEO of Writeway, I'm sure you have a perspective on this next one, which is, what's the best piece of advice you would give to an aspiring author?
Oh, I mean, I know I keep talking about the business, but understand the business that you're about to get into. I know a lot of people say, write the best story you can. And that's great. That's the fun part. But all the stuff that comes after, those are the pieces and parts, the components that will separate you from just writing a good story to being a successful author. So defining what success means to you, figuring out what publication path feels right for you, I think is extremely important. So asking those questions and getting to understand the industry.
All right. Now, I know you've had a lot of success with your writing, both fiction and nonfiction, as well as amazing success of Writeway. In what ways do you celebrate your success?
So I'm not great at this. I've been told that I need to celebrate my success more. I celebrate like when our authors get published or land a deal. It's so exciting and it's so celebratory, but I am not great about celebrating my successes. With a book launch, you usually have a book launch party. That's how I always celebrate that success. But with Writeway specifically, it's like we've survived during the pandemic. We've like tripled our revenue and done all these amazing things, but we really haven't celebrated. So yeah, I need to work on that more, because I think in this society, we just move on. It's like, oh, cool. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing. That sometimes it's hard to like sit still and actually appreciate what you've accomplished.
Yeah. All right. So next up, if somebody you loved was having a bad day, what book would you choose to cheer them up?
Ooh, okay. So I'm currently reading this really old book, but it is one of my faves, but it's called Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks. And it is really just dropping you into, it has like 22 different practices on actually feeling better. And, it's all about the law of attraction and all that fun woo-woo stuff, but you can't read that book and then still stay in your funk. It's so actionable. That would definitely be one that I would hand someone.
An anti-funk book. There you go.
An anti-funk book. There you go.
All right. So this one is a little bit morbid. But just imagine kind of you're like living your final moments. What are you going to be most proud of? You're looking back on your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm love questions like this because, again, in our culture, I think we revere our work. I spend a lot of time on my work, but I think just having loved as many people as I possibly could and them feeling loved by me, I think at the end of the day, it's all about relationships and how you've made other people feel in your life, how you've helped them. And then also, keeping a child alive is a really tough task. And like bringing a child into this world and watching her grow, there's nothing like it.
And they don't come with instruction manuals either.
Oh my God, do they not? And I had a 52-hour labor with her. So she made me work for it. She made me totally work for it.
Do you have a reminder of that 52-hour labor?
No, I mean, do I ever remind her?
Right.
Oh yeah. All the time. I thought you said, do I have a reminder of the 52-hour labor? Yes, I remind. It's why she's an only child. Actually, nope. One and done.
Last up here. This is question number 7, and you can't say don't get married at 22. But what words of advice would you give your younger self aside from don't get married at 22?
Don't take it all so seriously. I am a very serious person. I am a bit of a workaholic. I think I would tell myself, just have more fun and play. I think, I watch my daughter, she's 9. She's the most imaginative, playful human I've ever seen in my life. And when do we stop doing that? When do we stop taking naps? When do we stop playing? When do we stop like pursuing true fun? So I would say, yeah, have a shit ton more fun, and just don't take it all so seriously.
Yeah, it's almost like I would love to go back to that moment in childhood where, and it's probably like a progression. It's not one
Sure.
event, but where the imaginative play stops, where you're no
Oh,
longer content just drawing pictures or putting on a
definitely.
show for people, and just like talk some sense into that person saying, you can still keep doing this. That's quite all
That's
right.
too good. There's a book, another book I would recommend called The Power of Fun by Catherine Price. She wrote a book called How to Break Up with Your Phone. And she just came out with The Power of Fun. And it talks explicitly about that. Like, when do we lose that, and how to pursue fun and play as an adult, which is so vital. We don't put any sort of priority on having fun.
So Ria, we've learned a lot here. Number one, we've learned that you're incredibly gifted, that you're incredibly generous and giving back to the sort of the writing community, and helping shape the future, the next generation of writers. We've also learned that you don't celebrate your success enough, which is,
No.
I'm no doctor, but that's my prescription to you would be to
Yeah,
celebrate more.
definitely.
One thing I haven't learned is, where will Secrets of Our House be available when it goes on sale on February 8th?
Yes, anywhere that books are sold. And I always recommend to people, if you can, go to your local bookstore and purchase a book. It really helps the bookstore. I know Amazon is so easy to click. My books are usually always in Target or other big box retailers as well.
All right, there you go. Well, wherever books are sold on February 8th, look out for Secrets of Our House by Rea Frey. Rea, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.